Hello, Hockey World. We are here and we are live, and it doesn't matter that we don't have anything to talk about. Just kidding. We've got stuff to talk about. We got rumors galore. We're going to be joined by a special guest at some point during the show. We are joined by Anthony.
He's not so special.
Anthony's here. Anthony's a quasi special guest, at this point.
I parachuted here and there,
Yeah,
part of the framework.
Like the 101st Airborne.
Exactly.
Perfect on given the day it is.
There you go. Veterans Day, I know. But first, to Russ.
So two items. This first one comes unsolicited, but of course I got an email, so I'm going to mention it because November 18th, Upper Deck Series 1 hockey comes out. So the Alexis Lafreniere rookie will come out. Card number 201 if you're looking for it on eBay. Just letting everybody know. Anthony should probably know this too because his son's into collecting now. So I'm just throwing it out there for whoever wants to know. The bigger subject, though, is all of a sudden MLB is going back, or Manfred going back on what he said, and now it looks like the DH is going to be in the National League this year after he said it wouldn't be. And this is where having a commissioner with no spine or backbone kills the sport, because apparently the owners are just like, no, we want the DH, and we're not going to do expanded playoffs unless we get it. And this is where a commissioner should be talking to the owners and saying, you do this now after I went back and said this, you're going to annoy a lot of fans, and it could affect at the gate. He doesn't do any of that, and I'm frankly,
as far as you can tell, he doesn't do any of that.
Well,
are you surprised at this, Russ? Though
I am surprised.
We thought last year that once it went in, regardless of what was said, it was here to stay.
Right, we did think that, but I took him at his word. That was my fault.
Yeah, we've learned. Well, the only way to take him on his word is that he's basically breaking up the minor leagues in the way we know it. I mean, I have friends of mine. Look, I'm not friends with a lot of people from Staten Island. Just I used to work with a bunch of them. There are people who are apoplectic in terms of what they did. What they did, both the Mets did for Columbia, and also for one of their other for Kingsport, but especially Columbia. And also what the Yankees did, where they don't even call the teams to tell them they're no longer their reps, but they find out in social media.
They found out on Twitter.
As abhorrent as you can get in 2020.
Yeah,
they found out on Twitter. So obviously, whoever did the press release for the Yankees is somebody who broke up with his girlfriend over email. I mean, honestly, it's like I have no respect for Rob Manfred. He goes back on because I thought like the thing that made me sick was the announcement that they were going to continue with the runner on second base in extra innings. There are some people who said, okay, if you're going to the 11th or 12th inning, fine, do that. But you're going to do that in the top of the 10th. It's so friggin' asinine that it's beyond words.
I agree.
It really is.
It's like
I agree. I mean, again, look, like you said, if we had started in the 11th inning or the 12th inning, right, we probably would be the 10th inning just seems way too early to do it. Play a couple of innings, then see what happens, and then if nobody scores, then maybe make the modification. We saw this year it wasn't particularly well received.
It'd be like in hockey having 2 minutes of overtime and immediately go into the shootout.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what's the point.
I think that anything in sports that leaves like this unknown aspect of it that can go on forever is exciting to me. Like that's just
right.
It is part of what we don't have anymore in society. Like everything is so planned out. I mean, maybe not as much as it used to be.
No, but that's the beauty of baseball. There's no clock. There technically are no restrictions. A game could go just as long as it goes. Like that is supposed to be the way it is, and it's partially that way now, but not fully.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. I think it needs to be. We need to keep that. Like the NHL should never, ever, ever change. Their overtime and
right.
And I think they proved they won't if they didn't do it this year. This is the only year they've ever done it. So, and Gary Bettman, who we're going to get to in a second, is a big fan of the endless overtimes. So that's not happening anytime soon, for sure. But happy Veterans Day to those out there as well. My dad is a veteran.
My dad too.
My dad too.
Yeah. So my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force.
Are you trying to show off now? Do I have to say what my dad was? Because you're a fire? Is that where this is going? Is this?
My dad was a brigadier general.
Right.
Would have to say it all.
I'm not telling you what my dad was.
I can tip all of you. So my grandmother's maiden name was Eisenhower.
Ooh.
Distant relatives of Dwight's family. So and my grandfather was he was in the Army Corps of Engineers as a lieutenant, so he was that. But we have that connection there.
All right, so if we're gonna do proudness, I gotta do one proud thing about my dad. So this is definitely like this. It's an amazing thing. So if you remember way back when Nixon went to China, it was a big deal. Like Nixon,
I remember that.
China. This was like a huge thing for a U.S. president to go to China at that time. And my dad was a navigator. Flew in C-141s, which are big cargo planes, and they drop. My dad was really good at dropping troops. Like basically, on X's and stuff like that. That's what he did. That's what he was best at.
Hopefully they had parachutes.
They did. So back then, so when Nixon flew to China, because the U.S. was worried about security stuff, they flew 4 C-141s into China, not telling anyone which one the president was on, right? And this is typical stuff. And my dad Nixon was on my dad's plane, along with Hartman. What's Hartman from the Good Morning America? I want to say
David Hartman.
David Hartman was on the plane as well, flying over with Nixon as part of like the press corps. And so I have a big signed thing, that plaque that's from Richard Nixon, thanking my dad for being part of that, signed by Richard Nixon. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
And on the bottom it says "From the Watergate Hotel."
All I could give you from my dad is that they asked him to box as a middleweight in the Army, and he didn't do it because he doesn't like getting hit in the face, which I totally get.
As usual, like in the Army, most people have multiple duties. My dad was part of an artillery unit in Korea, part of the 5th Regimental Combat Team, which was the same unit that James Garner was in. But he was also for his unit, he was the cook. So he would be shooting a self-propelled 75 millimeter cannon and then go to make chipped beef on toast. So it's like
chipped beef.
Chipped beef on toast.
Yeah.
My
dad would never eat that.
You know what they call it in the military, right?
Shit in the shingle.
SOS.
Yeah, there you go.
My grandfather worked with the POWs that they captured. So we had a chess set that was made from one of the POWs in the prison that he took forward with him, which was pretty cool. That's
something. That's really something.
Okay.
All right, let's get going here. Yep. Anyway, moving on. My goodness, what's today? Today's Wednesday. November 11th.
The 11th.
11. Here we go.
Surprise.
I'm Michael Agello.
Wait, no, I didn't say anything.
False start, 5-yard penalty.
Come on! You said
full start on Agello. That'll be a 5-yard.
Yeah, really, Mike. Go in the box. Get in the box for 10 minutes. All right.
No.
Misconduct. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, November 11th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
All right.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Anthony Mangione.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we're going to get to some rumors today. We're getting back to rumors. Get Mike back. Mike's feelings. Come back, Mike. You're good. But yes, we're going to get to some hockey rumors and some news, and we're going to also discuss a couple other things as we go along here. But I wanted to start off with everything with Gary Bettman's recent stuff about the season upcoming, which is really kind of fascinating. Because yesterday Bettman came out and talked about finally about sort of where they are right now, and it's not too dissimilar from what we've been saying, but it was good to hear the actual concept. First concept that there would definitely be new aligned divisions, which definitely implies the Canadian division is a reality. He mentioned the Canadian border. He also mentioned the fact that there were quarantining rules, if you came from too far away in the States as well. So, going from Florida to California could be a quarantining issue. So the concept of keeping teams in similar spots seems to be a definite reality. So the Canadian division is, it looks like it's a go. I
think that's too strong. I think right now it could happen, but I think that based on when they start, what Russ was talking about before in terms of the Canadian teams playing against each other in the normal divisional setup, getting those games done, which would take probably a month. And then if the border opens, then they could resume that kind of normal schedule. But I mean, right now, everything they have to plan for multiple things because they don't know when the Canadian government is going to loosen the restrictions on the border.
Okay, yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely true. I think the restrictions are going to. I mean, obviously, we have no idea where this is going. News about the vaccine is wonderful news, and I think that's part of the reason we heard this yesterday from Bettman was that the vaccine, is looking. No, we don't know when everybody's going to be vaccinated. Yesterday, Fauci came out and said that we could all be looking at like April or May, which is really way quicker than I thought. Because I was figuring we're looking at the end of this. I'd be happy if everybody was vaccinated by the end of 2021. I thought that was like a realistic thing. But keeping, of course, the more people need it most sooner. But
the reason that this came out, Eck, is because there's a Board of Governors meeting tomorrow.
Right. There's a Board of Governors meeting tomorrow. But I think that, and really, this is also tying in with all the rumors, and that's what I'll get to. It's interesting that rumors after this sort of came out started to be mentioned again as well. And people started because everyone's been on hold to wait for this. The other thing is a shortened season is something that he said was possible. Before he'd been, all about that this is going to be an 82 game season, which we kind of knew, but.
I mean, it's laughable. I mean, I'm not putting down Bettman, but to say the season's starting on January 1 or in January, but he's still hanging on to that 82 possibility of 82 games. There's no way they're playing 82 games.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's no way they're going to start like a week before Christmas because they have to take a Christmas break, and you don't want to start up players and then all of a sudden say, yeah, now you got to take 4 days off.
Right.
And try and do it all over again.
You're not going to get players. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get players to go on board to get on board with that. They just won't.
Well, I would say this. I don't think they're going to start. They're going to start. I don't know. What I've heard is that we could see December. We could still see December camps with
camp, sure.
With the camps, right? And the concept of, they're not going to start before Christmas, obviously, like you said, but they could take a camp and then take a week break and then have like one more week of camp and then start.
Yeah.
And I think, and the Flyers this whole time have been telling people internally around the 18th of January. And I think that still feels realistic to me. Like that still feels.
When the NBA was going to start, right? But they moved it up because for them, it was a $500 to a $1 billion impact by starting on December 22nd as opposed to January 18th.
They have a big Christmas game, right? So that's like, obviously the NBA's got Christmas Day. So that's
but it's more the number of games to fulfill their contract with TNT and ESPN.
Right.
Whereas what Kevin said last Friday is applicable to the NHL. I mean, they want to start as early as possible for their advertising partners, but in terms of the games played, they only make $200 million a year divided by 31 teams from NBC, and they probably make more money from Sportsnet in Canada.
Oh, they do. No, and the big thing of the Canadian thing is, and a big reason that the Canadian division is happening, I'm fully convinced, is because I was told when it comes to television revenue, at least to the current contract, like 60% of their television revenue is Canadian. Right. So that is a bit. So they're going to make by making Canadian division that is considered something that Canadian versus Canadian teams are always the biggest tickets for for Sportsnet.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that the Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada make their money on playoff games, and if you have an all Canadian division, you're limiting the Canadian teams to 4 teams in the playoffs playing against each other, meaning you'll only have one team in the conference final. I mean, that's gonna kill them.
Well, unless they change the bracket,
they go to bubble.
Right. So last year everything got modified. So I think they would have no choice.
Right.
Kind of modify them. And they have to go with top 2 teams in each division, and then the next 8 or something make it.
Right, and I think that the other thing is, so Batman also implied a little bit about how this could possibly work with hubs in the beginning, not just 2 hubs, but several hubs, and the concept of playing a bunch of games against each other for a couple weeks and then taking a week off and being with your family for a week type thing.
Well, that was the thing that I was curious about, because this hybrid bubble scenario, getting this out before they really get together with the players in the return to play committee seems to me like not a shot across the bow because that sounds too serious, but it definitely sounds like that's the plan that they want, and they're trying to influence the players. Whereas we know the players don't want a
No, they'll be home for a week after that.
Yeah, it depends how you play it out. Like if the players are like, we're going hardcore for like 10 days,
and then they're for return to play, that's a different story. But if you have a built-in break.
But this is what I just
like an extended road trip essentially. But then you're home without any.
But this is what I said to Russ when I read the piece by Nick Costanica about this, was the fact that, okay, so they're going to play 10 to 12 days in Buffalo, and then they're going to go back to their families. Well, their families are not going to be in a bubble. They're going to be living their lives normally. So they're going to
have to go back to testing, right?
It may be attractive to the players, but then you have to consider they're with other people. Then they come back. Right. They're not in a bubble. Then you're bringing it back in. And again, the amount of money that's going to cost with regards to testing, retesting, everything else.
Yeah.
These are
I don't know if it's worth the trouble to do this hybrid bubble. Whereas if you're going to if they're going to expose themselves to their families who are not going to be living sequestered lives, then you may as well do like a Major League Baseball type of setup and just travel normally, but just bubble in place.
The only thing that I don't like about the Canadian division is it does upset competitive balance. But if they don't have a choice, they don't have a choice.
Right. They don't have a choice. And the Canadian division right now happens to be pretty good, but it just happens to be pretty good right now. I mean, there were years when the Canadian division, where we had one or two teams making the playoffs. So, you just have to face it, and it's not going to be like that forever. Bettman's made it clear this is a temporary thing, and this is just a thing that to get through this season and see where we are. Now, also, I've also heard the players chiming in on this, and I've talked to a couple of players, and they all seem to be pretty much okay with it, which I was a little bit surprised with. Like I thought this would be a little bit more of I was expecting more of okay, we're not going into a bubble, but they like the idea. And the way it would work too, by the way, is it wouldn't be like every team would be off for the same week. They would stagger this so that maybe like this would be the not Patrick division. I was like, how old am I? What the hell am I saying? The Metro division's week off, and then the next week, you have the Adams division. I'm losing my mind.
Where's the Norris and
the Adams would be interesting if they did that again. I'm all in.
They should call the divisions that. But what I'm trying to say is there would be like bye weeks essentially for the whole divisions at a time, and that way you'd always have hockey going still.
Versus the teams versus having the teams like we've had in recent years with the bye, basically on a team by team basis, which is in recent years.
Why don't you just have Ilya Bryzgalov become commissioner? You could have one humongous division.
Okay, Flamesters. Flamester is not liking this setup.
What's wrong with you, Randy? What's wrong with you? Come on, that's not cool. We cancel the season. We're all out of work. They don't want to do that.
No fan wants a season canceled.
Fans are frustrated with all the permutations and everything that comes with how this might get set up, and it's just like it's easy to throw your hands up and say, "Let's not try."
So remember, don't forget what Mike said about traveling in baseball. Right, it's a little different. You're doing 3-game series. So you're staying somewhere for a couple of days. A little different here, unless you're doing back-to-backs.
You could do that.
Well, they probably will be doing back-to-backs.
Yeah, I mean, if they were traveling, Jan, that's what they were planning on doing. They were planning on doing those series.
But I mean, Eck, I would think, like as an example, you would want them to play against 3 or 4 teams in this hub, not just 2, right?
Right.
So
it would be basically what I was told is it would be like a 4-team hub,
right?
We have 4 teams there, so the divisions would be split. The division would be split into 2 hubs.
That makes sense.
Say 4 in Philly, 4 in New York.
So Toronto would go to Calgary and play Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg.
Right, and the next time would be a different grouping.
It'd be Calgary, Winnipeg, and Vancouver.
Right. It would and it would that way you'd have different groupings, and it would be kind of a fun little thing to. There you can see the fun in it. I mean, it's like a little bit of like I even heard one. Which is really funny because I don't know if you guys remember years ago I proposed this concept of these mini seasons throughout the season and getting extra points for it. There was a concept of like each of these hubs could actually be its own little tournament sort of, and you would get points for the win, but you might also get a point or 2 for winning the actual
This isn't soccer. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
It's curious, it's interesting. I mean, I like
getting quarter points for winning quarters or periods also, and
it's like in racing,
this isn't NASCAR.
Winning laps.
You get the
point.
point.
Lap, you get a point.
10, but then then you get the fastest lap.
Yeah, what is this? The Winston Cup?
No, but making like a little bit of like having like a little championship game in that situation. I think it's kind of I don't know. To me, Granted, it's not likely, but I like the fact
Adam Silver, I think, for the NBA had broached a similar. I don't think the concept went over that well. I can't see them doing that here.
Well, but they only have one team to worry about. Like Toronto's going to come here and play in, whatever, New Jersey. That's the only team they have to worry about.
Right. And
it makes it much easier. Same with baseball.
And the Buffalo Blue Jays will be back in their hometown in April,
which they're not looking forward to, but they're going to do it anyhow.
They made the playoffs.
Right. So I mean, they're saying, if the NHL, like Michael asks in the chat, if the act doesn't play, if the NHL doesn't play this year, how would the draft order work next year? And that's just not going to happen. The NHL's going to play.
If the NHL doesn't play, worry about the league. Don't worry about the draft at that point.
Then you worry about the league.
And the owners want to play. There's
players do.
They do.
And the players do too. These people want to play. And they all understand that it's going to be tricky. And the hope is, the real hope here is that the playoffs have fans. That's what I keep hearing. That's the concept is, even if they were to play up to, like I had said before, and now if they're willing to shorten the season, they don't have to. But if they were to play up to the Olympics and then take that as a regular season, then take the 20 days off for the Olympics and then start the playoffs right after the Olympics, which is a concept that had been thrown around. That they have August
with that. I could live with that.
Yeah, August 15th. Maybe by then, the way the vaccine's looking, maybe by then you can put fans in the pen. Maybe we're back to some quantity of normal. And if you go sell the tickets for the playoffs, it could be very exciting. And by the NHL continuing this going, you are just building up anticipation for actually being able to go to see hockey games again.
But this is the fact that not too many people are putting in here. The Olympics may not happen because
that's another thing. And I wrote that yesterday in my article, Mike. You're right, absolutely right, because we're assuming the Olympics are going to happen, and there's every possibility that the Olympics get pushed one more year, especially if if the vaccine looks positive, because there's just too much money that Japan's put into this.
Right.
Building all
the
these.
only difference is, though, I think they said if it doesn't happen this year, they're not doing it in Tokyo.
No, that won't. I don't buy that at all, because
I believe they said that though.
But they've spent over what, like $300 million.
Well, no, the problem is
building arenas and stadiums and stuff like that.
No, but the problem is that the Olympics for the winter and the summer would be in the same year. They don't want to do that. Right. So what they would do is Tokyo would probably go to 20.
Everything that we're doing right now, would that matter? I mean,
to them it does, because it's money.
I mean, for Japan, does it matter if the Winter Olympics are happening? No. I mean, Japan. I'm saying if Japan is
for the IOC, it matters.
No, what
they would probably do is they would probably have the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and then Tokyo would get the Olympics in 2024. They can't let the facilities that they built for that Olympics go to waste.
Right, you can't let that go to waste. I mean, that's too much. They put too much into that, and I don't know where the 2024 Olympics are scheduled to be right now. I heard. I don't even know if that's been scheduled officially, but
I'll look.
I've heard that it's coming back to North America actually for the Winter Olympics.
No, the 24 Olympics probably have already been assigned. Let's see here.
Yeah, they probably already are assigned.
I know the next. I heard like one of the next two Winter
Olympics. Paris.
Okay, so
I'm sure that'll cost nothing.
Yeah, I mean it's okay to push this back. I mean I don't see them having an issue with it, really, honestly. I mean,
also having it in separate years allows them to spread out the financial impact and the revenue as well, exactly. Right? You much rather have the impact on 2 years as opposed to 1 year, because then it shows better in terms of the overall P&L.
Right.
It is better, but canceling it all together isn't very good for the
financial. Well, right now we don't know what's going to be, right? So none of us know what's going to happen. We've all
I just think canceling is probably the last thing they're going to do. I don't see that happening. That's like
let's say this: if it means pushing Tokyo to 2024 or having the Olympics next summer with no fans,
push it.
Well, no, they're not going to
push it 1 year. Push it to 2020.
It's on Twitter. They just had a press conference apparently and said that it's going to go ahead, and whether the number of fans will be determined. So they're doing it.
Okay. So the NHL is going to have
that far away in this day and age. We know is not.
They can decide to do it, and if they don't have fans, that's the way they're going to do it. But they could do that. That's like
part of it is the impact on the athletes, right? For all those who remember the 1980 boycott, and people we still talk about it 40 years later in terms of the athletes who missed out. That's a major. You've trained your whole life, and now your window is gone. That's a factor as well.
No, the only thing I talk about for that Olympics is when I was at school at University of Houston and eating at McDonald's. Sometimes you had the tear-off game for the Olympics, and anytime you basically got a U.S. gold, you got a free meal because Russia being out of it.
Yeah,
I know. And also the theme of one.
You know how many Big Macs they got because of Mary Lou Retton?
Oh my God!
Remember, there's a Simpsons episode that takes off of that too, where like they have the U.S.
That explains a lot, Mike.
The U.S. swim team is going up the 100-meter dash against people from countries, all of which are landlocked or something like that. Like the Simpsons basically did a great takeoff on that.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm a big fan of Mitch Gaylord.
I would tell Paul Simon the World Cup of Hockey isn't dead, but they have to wait until they have regular NHL seasons to do that too.
It was 4 years ago right now. I mean, we're just 4 years ago, a month back.
Yeah.
And Paul, there are
too long anyway, and they just kind of brought it back. So that's.
And Paul, there are 50 ways to leave your lover.
Yeah. In that song, he only names like 6, I think. So.
Yeah. Hey, he's a relative of mine. Don't make fun of him, man.
I love him.
I mean, so I think we have to all like anything that's more than 3 months from now is they're planning on doing the Olympics still. I just think that's what you have to say. Like these are going on.
I'm not telling you it's smart. I'm just telling you that's what he said.
It's all a plan, right? I mean, it's like you can't sit there and say things. They were planning to do the Olympics this time last year, as well. Like
no, but I think they can be confident in saying, look, we are going to hold this, and then we'll just see how the rest turns out. They can do it. It's their own country. They could do whatever the hell they want, honestly.
No, they can. But they definitely need to make money on it. I mean, it's not a it's not a guarantee that now unless they. I mean, I know the television.
I'm assuming they have a certain amount of money lined up. I would have guessed that.
Well, TV money is up, of course, the big thing with the Olympics, And that the funny thing about the Olympics is when you cover the Olympics, you really feel that like immediately. That was the biggest difference between covering hockey and for the NHL and covering hockey for the Olympics. Like the media is treated like absolute friggin' gold for the Olympics.
Like, look, television companies, they're going to advertise. There's plenty of other companies that will advertise.
Oh yeah. You're it. I mean,
especially if there's nothing else sports-wise going on.
Correct.
Well, this has to be good
baseball will be going on.
This has to be a good sign for the NHL in terms of their new TV deal. I saw on a show on sports. It's called Sports Money. It's on the Yes Network, talking about the new contract that baseball got with one of their. I think it was TBS. It doubled. It was like a $3 billion deal. And it's just because of content, because they're providing content. The NHL, the NHL is going to get a lot more than $2 billion on a 10-year deal from ESPN or Fox Sports or NBC on this new deal, which they're going to need because obviously they need to make some money.
But baseball's still going to make more money on TV than hockey, Mike.
Well, because it's double the number of games and it's more. But Russ, it is a regional sport now.
It's still a bigger regional sport.
Yes, but it's a regional sport.
All right, let's get into some rumors here. And I'm going to start with I'm going to bring up the rumor chart. We can play off that. We're going to start with our two big guys right now, Vatanen and Hoffman, who are these two, the dynamic duo at this point in my mind are Vatanen and Hoffman. So
who's Batman?
Vatanen.
Who's Batman? You said the dynamic duo.
The dynamic duo would probably be Hoffman. I think that
where do you get all those wonderful toys, Mike?
Much smaller guy. All right, so here we have. Here's our little bit of our rumor chart here for Sammy Vatanen. Now, the latest with Vatanen is the Florida Panthers, and they've been coming on pretty strong as a team. Okay. I could definitely see them signing him. He makes a lot of sense for them. They need to make themselves more solid. Zito is a guy who is a definite. I mean, what people have to remember about Zito, they always joke around with Columbus and the concept of put a line in there like being like finish and all that stuff. Zito was like the king of Finland as well. Representing a lot of great Finnish players. He would go to Finland every year to try to get his players. So I'm
not so sure about this one only for one reason. they just signed Mackenzie Weegar, and he's making $3 2/4.
Yep.
They traded for Nudavara. They signed Gudis. Unless they're buying out somebody, really, why would Vatanen go there? They have a top 6. It's like it doesn't look like he'd be fighting for playing time, or he would push somebody like Gudis or Nudavara out of the lineup. I mean, it makes more sense Winnipeg, because he's going to walk right into the starting lineup there. He'll be a top pairing or second pairing with Winnipeg.
I think what you have to realize with Florida is that they're not done trade wise. There's a lot of things they're still trying to do. So I think when when you look at their top 6 now, some of those guys are definitely going to be there. Some of them might not be. But I think
they're going to have players.
The problem with Winnipeg is how they fit him in salary wise.
Right.
That's the big issue there.
And how long of a deal is it? Because right now, they're capped out.
He's been demanding a 3-year deal, and that might have to slide. He's not the only one that's demanding a 3-year deal. Hoffman has been too, but now Hoffman, we'll get to him in a second, is his terms have changed a little bit in the last 3 or 4 days. But the other team I like on there is Ottawa. I think Ottawa's would make sense with them too. Obviously, if you're gonna go to Ottawa, you're going to Ottawa, for a 1-year deal with a chance to it's an interesting situation to be in. Now, I wonder now, thinking about this as a Canadian division now, how that affects the Ottawa Senators, which it affects them a lot, because you're going to now. If you're the Ottawa Senators, you are the worst team in a very good division.
But they were anyhow.
Right.
Yeah, but they weren't.
No, they're the second worst.
Second worst
behind Detroit, but they're still
And before you had Buffalo and Detroit, both of which they could compete with Buffalo. Perhaps they could be on that level of Detroit.
I think Buffalo's better because of the Hall addition.
Probably, but at the same time, Ottawa's got so many good young players, and they're so.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I think Ottawa could surprise people, but throwing them into that division, are you
going to pick Ottawa as a playoff team, Ek?
No.
Okay.
No, they're not
Edmonton. Ottawa. He's chasing basically the dollars is what he's hoping to chase, and also if he signs a 1-year deal to get dealt at the trade deadline to go somewhere to be with a contender. I would be shocked if he signs a 3-year deal somewhere, just given the way the landscape in the marketplace is.
Yeah,
but Ottawa, if you're doing that, you're expecting maybe year 3, you have a shot at the outside shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, you do. Outside, very outside. I agree. The other, so now moving on to New Jersey, we've talked about before with them as well. I mentioned before in New Jersey, and that they still would have an interest in bringing him back for, they have had discussions with him, but they haven't gone anywhere so far. I think they want a shorter deal, than he wants to do. But then, then the Mike Hoffman and the Montreal Canadiens, which is, now I know Montreal cap space wise isn't in the best of spots at all, and I realize that fully. And so when I wrote that, when I put them there, I'm putting them there knowing that, I'm putting them there basing on that I'm hearing that they've got other things in the works as well.
Okay.
Well, it would have to be probably trading Tatar, because
Tatar would be moved. It would be the guy. And there are teams that like Tatar, and they should like Tatar. Tatar's not a bad pickup. So
but at the price he's at, that's the problem.
The price is high, but there are some teams like Arizona who have
they're not spending a dime. Come on.
No, but there's different. Obviously it depends on there's different situations, right? And how things.
If you trade up Tatar, they're going to trade you back someone who makes $7 million.
Well, obviously they're trying to get low, but there also is a point at which they could go too low, depending what the whole situation in Arizona depends on who they have to move, to get to the point they need to get to, right? And if they're trying to get to the lowest point they can,
right?
If they have to move somebody who's making a ton of money, for example, Ekman Larson. If Ekman Larson does end up moved out of there, he's making a ton.
He refused to move right now. He's done right now.
Yeah. As of now, yes, he is.
Right.
But I think that I still think that once you've gone down that road, it's open. It's a door that's open, and it's something that people can say no, but it's not that hard to reopen the door. It's harder to open that door the first time than it is the second time.
But I think it's safe to say with both of these players that more than likely they're looking, probably the teams that are interested are looking at 1-year deals, and based on the way the market is right now, I don't think that the players want any more than they'd love a multi-year deal if they're getting overpaid, but nobody's overpaying. So I think they're going to have to be content with a 1-year deal with some protection of what being traded at the deadline and controlling where they can go.
Exactly, and I think you're right about that. Now, an interesting thing on the Hoffman list is the Columbus Blue Jackets there, who you see have moved down from 30% to 20%, and I would almost put them at 10%. I'm hearing that they are pretty much fading out on Hoffman. That
Wow.
The 5-year.
That's a team that could desperately use Hoffman.
You would think, right? But
that in Nashville.
For 5 years, they have their own internal cap in Columbus, right? And they have to sign Dubois. So are in a situation where, depending on how this plays out, they really have they have to make some key decisions. And I was heard that Hoffman at $5 million, and that is the price right now. The 1-year deal, Mike Hoffman, $5 million deal. That seems to be what you can, if you want Mike Hoffman, give us $5 million for 1 year.
Well, Columbus could be in a position where, Brandon Dubinsky is a player who's going to be on LTIR next year because I think it's concussions, and he's likely done for his career.
Right.
I thought it was a bad wrist. I thought he kept having.
Yeah, that's right. It's right. I thought it was concussions, but I think you're right. It's a wrist. Now they get insurance on that, so they're getting reimbursed probably 80%. But in terms of the cap, they might want to move him out, and there are teams who are up against the cap, like Toronto or a few others, that would take him, that would probably trade for him and put him on LTIR to open up space to do something else. So maybe that's a move that the Yarmulke line makes.
Yeah, I could see that. They really are very, very, content. They have to sign their big guy. That's what their focus is right now. And from what I've been told, that they're just Hoffman scares them a little bit at that price. Nashville, for some reason, as of now, still isn't in. And there's those two teams. I know when you look around, those two teams are the two teams that are mostly favored by most people out there predicting where Hoffman's going to go. There seems to be Columbus and Nashville.
I would be genuinely shocked if he goes to Buffalo, because I don't think he's going anywhere where he'd be a third liner. And I think in Buffalo, behind Reinhart and behind Olesen, he'd be a third liner.
I don't think he's behind Olesen.
So is Hoffman literally just pursuing the dollars, or does he want to go to a place where he can win?
Right, and that's when you look on here, like the team he wants to go to long term is Vancouver. That's what I've been told. But if he can't go long term somewhere, then he's pursuing
a 1-year deal.
A 1-year deal that puts him in the best situation for next year. And that was to give him the numbers he wants and to look impressive. He's got to go someplace where either he's going to go there and be traded to a playoff team, or he's going to go to a playoff team. But he wants to be playing in the playoffs, obviously, and he wants to be putting up big numbers. Similar to Taylor, and I think the thinking is similar to Taylor Hall, with next year's UFA market at forward being so slim. Hoffman's starting to think in terms of 1-year deal, which makes sense.
I don't think this year's market was that phenomenal. So
no, it wasn't, but it was better than next year's.
But he's still a scorer, and teams.
Yeah, but the problem with Vancouver is how are they fitting him under the cap? They're ready.
Right. And the Vancouver whole time.
Ready.
Right. They've been trying to move Louis Eriksson. They've been offering I've even heard a first-round draft pick in Louis Eriksson. I've been in a proposal. So they really wanted, and this was all basically geared towards getting Hoffman. It doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. So they're fading off. If he signs a 1-year deal with Vancouver, to say okay, maybe, but he really wants to be in Vancouver, I was told.
And the question is also, right, from a fit perspective, they could have maybe re-signed Toffoli and kept him long-term, who really fit in nicely on that team when he was brought over.
Yeah, and they tried, and that came out in the last couple of days too, how hard they tried. They really wanted to keep Toffoli there for sure. Now, Tyler Johnson, moving on to Tyler Johnson, next up on my chart. Again, I know Mike shaking his head. We've had this discussion before. The Preds have serious interest in him. So do the Bruins. So, the Bruins might make more sense just from a logical perspective. But
why would they help out Tampa?
Right.
Why would they help out Tampa? That's a great point. I think we're at a point though where it's I guess it depends how you're looking at it, right? We've seen this happen before. Why would Tampa help out Boston? And give them Tyler Johnson.
They're not.
They need the cap room because they have 3 guys they haven't signed yet.
Right, but they're also. But if they're going to move Tyler Johnson, they're going to trade him, right? So why?
who wants Johnson right now? It doesn't seem to be a robust marketplace for him.
It's not like Tampa could eat a lot of salary and say, yeah.
Right. There's more valuable than you're giving him credit for there, Jan.
As a player, he's a good player.
If he was making $2 million, that's one thing. He's making $5 million for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean,
play has degraded over the last few seasons.
Right.
Why are you taking on that lump of salary from a guy and a team who you know has to move him because Cirelli's still out there and Cernak's still out there and Sergachev they need to sign. So they're boxed into a corner.
And he's coming, and you know, you're talking about a 30-year-old, 5'8" center who's lost a step, who's coming off the worst year of his career, who's got 4 years left at $5 million. Yeah. Nobody is taking him off of their hands for free.
He's like Wile E. Coyote with an Acme anvil tied around his neck. Like right now, that's contract. That's what it's like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And after the next player, I'm going to say something that you guys have all been doing on all these players, which I think is fascinating and psychologically kind of cool. All right, so Shane Gostisbehere.
Okay.
Another possibility of Florida. Obviously, the marketing with Shane in Florida is something that
that would be a big deal.
He's a good PR guy. He'd be the first player, you know, from Florida from the Miami area to play for the Panthers. That would be a big deal. But also Chicago is definitely interested as well. And the Flyers, you know, they moved up from 10% in my mind to 20% as it feels, you know, harder and harder to move anybody right now.
Right.
He's going to probably, you know, I'm still thinking he's going to get traded, but you know, that could change in a week from now to 20 to 30 or 40% as well, because this continually, they're at their last wit's end on this. And so the Florida thing, you know, when you look at Gostisbehere, you have to also look up, you know, to Vatanen, two defensemen, you know, so they're not going to get both of them, obviously. So if they are moving one, and say they're moving Yandel out, which is possible, then you know things could be changing pretty quickly, and then suddenly you have one of them.
The only thing with this one, how much cap space does Florida have?
I'll look.
Not a ton, but go ahead. Yeah, Mike, let us know. They don't have a ton.
And that's where they're going to have to give back
the player. $8 million in room.
$8 million.
Okay, so they could take Gostisbehere, but to take him, that cost is going to be really high, and I think Fletcher has been not wanting to do that.
I think that and I think the Flyers would have to take something back, you know, and
right. But the same question Mike raised on Vatanen: who is he replacing in the lineup? B, what you've seen out of him. Honestly, you can have Yandel and Ekblad running your power play, and while Gostisbehere is clearly a guy who's good at it, the defensive liabilities he has makes you question why you would want to go out and get him, given the price point he's at also.
Yeah, you're going to take Anton Strawman back? He played well for Vigneault in New York.
No, they wouldn't take him.
Right.
As Paul Simon in our chat room, not the actual Paul Simon, but Paul Simon in our chat room pointed out earlier, and this is one of the scenarios that I heard as well. Yandel the Bruins, you know, as in a move that would open up.
Okay, I mean that they've wanted him for years.
Yeah, for years.
It's the local aspect for him.
Yeah, they have space to do it. That changes things drastically. If you move Yandel out, that changes things drastically in Florida.
Right. The minute that happens,
Chara never Yandel, right? You would also they still need to figure out what they're doing with DeBrusk, and that in essence pretty much closes the door on Chara.
Yeah, it's over for Chara if they bring in Yandel.
Right. I would say that's true too.
I mean, DeBrusk has no bargaining power, so they basically.
But he's still going to get a couple of million.
Yeah,
right? That's still going to take away what your cap space is.
Yeah. But he's not going to get what he's asking for, obviously.
No.
Moving on down the chart to Eric Haula. Another, you know, now here is Eric Haula, not as expensive as Mike Hoffman apparently, out there, and so this is something that I heard is within Columbus's realm. Like Hoffman at $5 million is just a little too much for them. Haula at $3 million, $3.5 million.
Yeah, but they need like bona fide scoring. Haula doesn't give you bona fide scoring.
I mean, Haula is more of a third line guy. I mean,
he actually is very similar to a lot of guys they have.
Right. He's a good player, but like it's not going to help their overall offense that much.
Right. I guess it just depends how he's going to where you see him playing. Do you see him playing with like a Fuda type character or something like that, where he could actually?
Yeah, I mean, he might play with Foodie, and that might help him.
Foodie, you know, we could put him with another skilled player. Halla's a better player when he plays with skilled players for sure. He's shown that. Mm-hmm. So you need to get him with the highly skilled guys.
I'd rather have Hala as my 2C than Mikko Koivu right now.
I don't know about that.
It's close, but I'd still rather have Hala.
Yeah, I don't think Koivu. Yeah, I think Koivu is your ideal 3, right? So that's how you want Koivu to be.
He is, but neither's an ideal 2. That's the problem.
Oh, it could be a 2.
Yeah, but who else? Again, with the fact that you kind of lost your number 2 with Wendberg, even though he really wasn't the number 2.
No, they're going to make
a decision. That role now.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to make it's going to be one of those 2 guys if they get him, or it's going to be Koivu if they don't have anybody else.
Right, because Grigorenko is probably your 4th center.
Right.
Right. Now, also, you'll see on here the Vegas Golden Knights still, which is tied. Obviously they have no money, right, at all. But this is still tied to the Marc-Andre Fleury possibility of moving out of there, which is, also in a stagnant area. Edmonton and Carolina being the 2 teams that still have interest in Marc-Andre Fleury, I've been told, if a deal can be made properly. Really interesting. Edmonton to me would be the most interesting one.
That would be the most interesting.
It would be interesting if it's a deal that, don't laugh. If it's a deal that flips Koskinen to Vegas for Fleury, that saves Vegas $3 million in salary.
Right.
Now we know that Fleury is like up here and Koskinen is down here, but Koskinen would be the backup to Leonard.
But the only thing is, if they go to Foley and say, we want to do this, we could save money, he's going to be like, is this going to hurt our chances to win the cup? And the answer will be yes.
No, you're talking about adding Hala.
You're adding Hala, who they like.
No, but the idea is, I still think there's always that little bit of a worry
about Leonard getting hurt.
About Leonard getting hurt, and if he does get hurt, they still want to be able to get to the Stanley Cup. They can't get to the Stanley Cup with Koskinen.
But can they get to the Stanley Cup with Marc-Andre Fleury? Because they didn't believe
it. You still can.
I think they can, but last year they didn't believe it.
I know they didn't believe it, but I still think putting him in that situation, like, you know what it takes, Zach. Like, a lot of times we all say, yeah, it can't be happen. It probably isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. But you never know. When you put a guy in that situation, he still could come through because he has the pedigree.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the big thing there. All right, move it, and then still Detroit with Eric Hala. I think he would fit really well in Detroit as well.
He would be good if they signed him for like 3 or 4 years and said you were going to be part of the solution here.
Yeah.
He could help a lot of their young players.
I agree. He brings a lot of it. So then Corey Perry, who
New Jersey should be higher. Like, New Jersey should be getting a guy like Hala.
He is the kind of guy they should be getting. At this point, I've heard them mention with him, and that's all but nothing serious, at least at this point. Maybe that changes. Corey Perry really sounds like he's going to go back to Dallas. Dallas really,
I can see that.
Dallas really has brought their team back. They
have,
which I'm not sure if that's always the best idea in the world, as we've seen.
Yeah,
well, it hasn't worked for the Cowboys.
I think they overachieved last year. They played well, but were aided by injuries by the other teams in the playoffs. We all think Colorado would have beaten them if they had been remotely close to 100%.
Sure.
Right. So Perry did not do much during the regular season. They need some younger bodies, especially with Sagan out, Ben hurt, and Bishop out.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And you're right. I think you're right, Jan. They didn't just bring their team back. They have their core for quite a while too. Like they have a lot of guys signed for quite a few years here.
Yeah.
In Dallas.
Some maybe for too long.
Anthony Duclair, I still think heading back to Ottawa at the end of the day.
You think maybe Anthony Duclair should have taken the $3+ million he was offered originally?
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Because now it's going to be less than that.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, I think but it makes too much sense for the Sens and him. He was a good fit there. He had a good season.
The team that should take him should be Columbus, but because of their coach, you can't do it because he's the one who started screwing with his career in the first place.
Right.
Water all over again.
He said him and Anthony get along famously.
Yeah.
Just not on the ice.
Right.
And they do have people bringing up Jersey already has 3 centers, and it's very true.
Just not when they're in the same room, Jan.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Zdeno Chara, obviously Boston still believe, but the one team I've heard that could be holding up to Boston, why Boston hasn't happened yet, is Pittsburgh, and the concept of Pittsburgh having to do something else to make this happen, which is very, I think the Penguins are the one team that really could make this happen, from what I've been told.
Well, it's a question of how much.
See it.
It's a question of how much Chara is looking to make, because right now the Penguins have like 1.3 million in cap space.
Right.
So I have a better question to you. Does Chara really make Pittsburgh a cup contender?
Well, he doesn't hurt their chances.
No, I agree. But if you're going to look at the contenders in the East, I still don't think they're one of those you'd have towards the top of the list.
Well, this may
they're in the 5 to 6 or 7.
This may be sacrilege, but okay. This is currently Pittsburgh's defense: Letang, Matheson, Dumoulin, Pedersen, Cody Ceci, John Marino, and Ricola. Okay, that's 7.
Yeah, that's not.
Chara is a bottom pairing guy on this team.
Well, he should be a bottom pairing.
No, I don't know about that.
I mean, he should be. We shouldn't be asking him to put up like 25 minutes like the Bruins were doing.
No, yeah, they're not going to put him up 25. But I don't know if he's a bottom pairing guy on that defense.
He also brings some real serious character to a group that I think.
Yeah, I still think Tampa. I don't know why Tampa's not on your chart, Eck.
I haven't heard them mentioned, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, that could make some sense. Derek Brassard. The Fly. I keep hearing the Flyers, and I know the concept here is that if Patrick is healthy, they don't need Derek Brassard.
Right, but if they get Derek Brassard, then you know that they're questioning Patrick.
Right.
I agree with you on that.
I think it comes down to that. Brassard isn't signing anywhere right now, and doesn't seem to be signing anywhere in the very near future. I mean, he's definitely behind Barzal as far as getting done, and even though Lou loves him and would like to keep him, but I think that so this is a player I really definitely think the Flyers would jump all over if they knew that Patrick wasn't coming back.
By the way, did all of you happen to see who the first PTO that was signed a couple days ago?
No,
it was a goaltender.
Darling.
Scott Darling.
Oh yeah, Scott Darling by Florida, right?
Florida,
so he's going to be in Seattle. That's
no, maybe
be exposed for Seattle
if they sign him to a 2-year deal. But think of it, it's Quenneville, and Darling was his backup in Chicago. So.
Yeah, Darling and Zito's also.
Okay. The day I want to be there covering the game, the day that Darling is in for Bob, I want to be there.
Right.
Because
I want to hear the post game for that one.
Remember, down the stretch, they were using Chris Dredger.
I know, but it's not like Darling's any better. I want to hear the explanation why Quenneville has put in Darling and is now going with him over Bob.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we've got a goalie who's making $10 million, and we have a goalie who's making $700,000. Which one do you think is getting the start? Let me see. Yeah.
Here's the thing also, with Brassard, what I think could happen is just because Patrick is scrimmaging, it doesn't mean a hill of beans, right? Because he's not traveling, he's not facing contact. If all of a sudden he's facing contact in camp and they see that maybe he isn't 100% yet, or he's going to miss some games along the way, or they feel that, Brassard could get a call while camp has started because he may not get a job right away.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. That's how I think this could play out too. I totally agree with you. I think that seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, there's going to be some really good players on PTOs. There's no question about that, especially given where everything's heading right now. Until we know exactly what's happening with the fans. Someone asked in the chat room earlier, how long can the NHL survive without fans? And
not much longer.
Not much longer.
Yeah, the answer is no, basically.
Right.
The answer is they can't. And I mean, there are some teams that can, but the NHL needs their entire group to really.
Think about this: the NBA lost $1.5 billion, and they didn't get any of their money from China. They're in trouble. The NBA is having financial difficulty as a result.
Thanks, Daryl Morey.
This is a really good question. Do the Flyers think Frost isn't ready?
He's on the Sixers now, Mike. Come on.
Do the Flyers think Frost isn't ready? Does that mean
if they're signing Brassard, or if they're considering that, then they're probably hedging their bets.
Well, again, I don't think it's a matter of do they think Frost is ready. I think it's a matter of is he ready to play center.
Yeah,
you can probably put Morgan Frost in there now on the wing, and I think he could play the part. But if you're truly grooming him to be some top 9 center, then you're going to wait. And I have no problem with them waiting.
I get the impression that they want him to take over for Giroux. it's a big shoes to fill. But I think that's the role they.
Okay, and if that's the case, then you don't rush this.
Right. And I think that's why they're doing it the way they're doing it. They see Morgan Frost as a serious player with serious scoring potential, who can lead the top line as a center. And I think that if that's going to happen, you do have to be careful.
He has really good vision, and I think that
he does.
I think his skills translate. I know he's played wing at the World Junior. I know he's played wing at times in the pro level, but I think he's a better center. I think the only thing is that they want him to be strong enough to be a center. But I think his benefits will be more as a center than it would be as a winger.
Agreed. And he has a lot of Giroud-like characteristics. There are things size wise. It's kind
I just need to see what he looks like physically. If Frost looks like he could handle the rigors of a season physically, then they might give him a chance.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and he, last year he came in and looked pretty good for a while.
He was bigger, but he wasn't quite there yet.
He wasn't there yet. He ran out of steam, and they definitely didn't want to blow it with him, so they moved him down, and
right.
Which I think was the right move.
It was.
To do, and they'll get a chance to see him. If the AHL starts sooner than the NHL, they'll get a chance to see him too.
Well, that's February, so right. The thing is though, if say the two leagues start when they say they're going to start, that's January 1 or January early January for the NHL, early February for the AHL. So for a month, you're going to have a bunch of players probably being a taxi squad for the NHL.
Yeah.
Because there's not going to be, which means that the salary cap is going to be sort of like in limbo because these players are sort of quasi going to be on an NHL roster without counting against the cap.
Very true.
All I was told today, and I'll be writing this in an article, but basically teams want players to play, and some of the franchises don't care what league it's in. They just want them playing. And that's why it'll be very interesting to see what happens here with the ECHL, because it's still not really set what teams are allowed to do as far as sending them players and who they'll accept. But that could be a big thing. But again, if the NHL would have just set their date, teams would probably let some guys go play now, knowing that they're coming back in January. Right. But right now, with it being up in the air, they're waiting on some of them.
Russ, that's why teams like Toronto have sent players to the Danish league and
the they don't care what league it is. It's just
second level of the Czech league. It's not about competitive balance or competitive level. It's about just getting their heart rate going.
Right.
Exactly. And that's that's what they're gonna have to try to find a way to make that happen. But that's all I got today for today, guys.
Okay.
But so thanks, guys. We'll see you. We'll talk to you again. We're not sure about tomorrow yet. Tomorrow's up in the air with the show, but we'll be back on Friday for sure. Still tomorrow's a possibility. So check the internet early in the morning tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a great day. We'll